Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Sabi Sands. We've been blessed with a very easy start today. These giraffe are a few hundred meters from the main control room. They do appear to be looking very intently into this thick vegetation on our left-hand side. We have done a few loops around and haven't seen anything immediately. That's not to say there isn't something there. The nice thing about giraffe is when they do see something, they tend to really focus in on it, and they do aid in us finding animals. So they've been staring very intently into this bush for a few minutes now. So we will continue to work the area, but welcome to the Sabi Sands, to Juma and Arethusa. Mark and the rest of the crew are just passing by on their way out now, so I'm sure you'll be catching up with him shortly. We've discussed our game plan for the afternoon, which will no doubt change drastically from our initial plans. But we do have a plan in place. We're going to work two different areas of the property to start off with. That we're trying to cover as much ground as possible. For any of you that are joining for the first time, this is an interactive safari, so you can ask us questions at any stage. On Twitter it would be #SafariLive, and on email questions@wildearth.tv. We will just, I think, park here for a few minutes and enjoy the view of these giraffes. It's a family of different sizes. There's a big bull on our left, and then two fully grown females, and there is a younger sub-adult around. So we've got all shapes and sizes here to start off with. And I'd just like to base myself here, because if whatever they're looking at does decide to move out of the vegetation, we've got two good views down this road, and there's also a road down to our left. It's a hot and humid afternoon. We are thinking that we could get rain, although the dark and gloomy clouds that were looming around us earlier have seemed to move off, which is good. But there are still some clouds along the southern horizon that we do have to keep an eye on. This big male is nibbling on the leaves of a marula tree. I wonder what it is that they were looking at. The chances of it being a leopard are quite high. There were tracks of a male leopard in this area this morning, so it could be that. They could have just got a glimpse of something small like a duiker or another small antelope and got a little bit confused. Animals do also make mistakes, so that could be the case, but not entirely sure at this stage. For those of you that joined on the morning drive, I did mention that the monitor that is just by the gear stick that shows me what Brian is filming. Brian's on camera this afternoon. Sorry, I forgot to introduce you all to Brian. Brian's a wonderful cameraman that's been working with WildEarth for a few different projects now. This is his third project, I believe. And sadly, whatever he's filming, I cannot see. So I'm just trying to look at the camera and get an idea of where he's shooting. But do bear with me if I'm talking about something irrelevant relative to what you are looking at.
I'll focus on what you're talking about.
Okay. Oh, we've got a cool animal here. It's a rock monitor. Now, it's going to be difficult for Brian to film, and I don't want to start the car, but hopefully it's going to come out. Oh, I might have to creep forward a bit. You see it there, Brian? It's just creeping along this big dead log. Oh, it's just slithering into the hole there.
No, it just didn't get it.
Its tail's still there. I don't know if you can get its tail slithering into that hole. Well, that was a rock monitor lizard. I spotted one a few weeks ago, perched in a cavity in a marula tree, about halfway up the tree, and it's one of their favorite places to hang out in cavities within trees. You see this female giraffe with an oxpecker that she's carrying along as a passenger is again come to this corner and had a good look in this bush. So what I think I'm going to do is get Alex, who's in the control, who's directing this afternoon, to take you guys across to Mark and let him say good afternoon to all of you, and that way it can give me a few moments to spend some time possibly on foot just looking through this area where I may have a better chance of finding it than in the vehicle. I mean, look at this behavior, folks. It really is awesome. You can see they're intently looking at something, and it's been for a few minutes now. We've driven past once and had a look here and come up with nothing, but surely there must be something here. I mean, look at that intent. She's bending her head down to get a better angle. So let's go and have one last look. Maybe this animal that is in here, that is catching their attention, is just low, very low to the ground, and we can't see it. I've just seen another game viewer, which is good news, so we've got extra help on the way. Initially when I saw them, I was hoping that they had spotted a leopard in a tree, but we have scanned the marula trees in this area, and they are the only trees that will provide a comfortable perch or position for a leopard to lie down. They could just be looking at these termite mounds, which look fairly lion-like, I guess. Okay, folks, well, like I said, if you don't mind giving me a few minutes to investigate this area a little bit better, potentially on foot, then hopefully we'll come up with something for you guys. And in the meantime, you can head off to Mark and see what he's up to. So I'm going to carry on and have a quick look about here, and we'll catch up with you a bit later.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Djuma Game Reserve and welcome to our PM Safari. Scott, I noticed, had some wonderful giraffe. My name is Mark. You're going to be joining me and Scott intermittently throughout the drive. This is the Jigger, and we're going to be heading to a different area trying to see what we can see. Glad to be back. I missed this morning. We're going to be doing that on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays for the first 4 days of the week. One of us will be doing the morning, alternating each morning. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we'll both be on in the mornings. But other than that, every PM our time, every morning maybe US time, it'll be both of us going out there and trying to find you whatever we can. Beautiful afternoon. We've had a very, very hot day. I reckon our temperatures have reached very high in the 30s, if not close to 40. And that is some indication that there's a bit of rain on the way, or a high pressure system for that matter. There have been some big thunderheads developing. I'm just looking at the sky now. It's very high. It can change in 5 minutes, but it's also might prove to be a really nice sunset. Up till now, I've pretty much spent most of my time in fairly localized areas around Djuma, mostly because we've had some wonderful cat sightings that have kept me almost anchored to areas relatively close to the main camp where we operate from, and it's been very, very lucky. We've been exceptionally lucky, in fact. We've had father and both sons in terms of leopard. I managed to see him last night on the way out. After we closed down, I actually found him on a termite mound on the edge of quarantine. That would have been Kunuma. just before we went home, and he was obviously waiting for the impala and some of the other things to come out onto quarantine. I believe there were some leopard tracks coming down Vuyatela Access Road this morning, and that means that might be something at Gowrie Dam later. There was word that it might have been female. I'm not too sure. Sorry, Egyptian geese started alarming and they've just flown away. They were fine with us when we got here, so I don't know if it's me or something else. I'm sorry, geese, if it's me. I'm obviously disturbed them. Anyway, so if it's female, there's generally only one female that it could have been walking down Vuyatela Access Road, and I think a lot of you know who that might be. And maybe we'll be lucky later. We're not going to really stick on that, because if we worry too much or if we try too hard, we're not going to have any luck. But we'll come back towards this area. I'm at Chelapan. This is an area we know as Chelapan. It's a lovely little open patch of open grassland. And there's a little pan, a water pan down below, that some of the past viewers, we've had some really amazing sightings of young leopard. Karula's boys, her second litter, played here quite a lot. We often found them on the edges of this little waterhole. We did an evening one night where we were frogging. We were looking for frogs with spotlights, and we were trying to identify frogs. So this is a particular area of Djuma that is quite central, and it's quite well known for some of the things that have happened here. We often find buffalo. There even used to be a little crocodile that lived in here for a while. And I have no doubt that over the next few weeks we're going to be finding some interesting things happening. The rains are going to come, it's going to fill up with water, and the foam nest frogs are probably going to be laying their eggs in a number of the branches of vegetation that are hanging over the pan. Very interesting concept, the way these frogs make these foam nests. So we're going to carry on. I'm going to go through the riverbed, and we're going to head up either Bateleur or one of these roads whose names I've forgotten. I've just been mentioning it, that after 3 years I can remember every single inch of every single road, but sometimes some of the roads I can't remember their names until I suddenly realized that I saw a particular incident there, whether it was an elephant or a kill or a cat or whatever the case may be. A particular incident suddenly brings back the name of the road. And like I said, I've been centered on certain areas of Gowrie for the last few days. I'm going to venture into parts that I haven't seen for the last 3 years, and hopefully we're going to see something wonderful there. So join us and let's see what we can find. Sounded like a Jacobin cuckoo calling, and my earpiece has been out, so I don't know. Hopefully all's running well. It's very hot, it's very humid. It's that kind of high pressure system that comes through when it's preceding nice thunderstorms. There's some big cumulonimbus building up in the south. Hopefully they're not going to bring some rain, because I haven't got my rain hat. I've got my dry weather hat. Sadly that doesn't really bring it out. It looks like it's white, but there's some wonderful texture to the cloud that we're going to see much later once the sun starts shining on the side of it. Nadav is on camera today, doing a fantastic job. Oh, we've got ellie tracks in the road. Being a bull, elephant bull, heading down. We're on Twin Dams Road now at the moment. Another road that brings back a lot of memories. Actually, I was thinking of bringing a Land Rover wheel nut, dropping it here one day so that somebody could find it, but I couldn't trick people like that, because then you'd never forgive me. We're approaching a spot where Tara and I one day had a flat, and we changed the actually not reappear. Well, I was going to go this way, but they're not fresh. Whole herd of elephant moved down Twin Dams Road towards Twin Dams, but possibly during the night. Those tracks are very old, or old enough that I'm not too excited about them. See, now we've got this crossing of this riverbed where a lot of other things happened over time, and I'm sure we might have some wonderful sightings here. And I've forgotten the name of it. There's Mumba Road, there's Bachelor Road, and maybe that was Nyala, I think. I remember. All changed to 12 flood. This hole, look at this. This hole, look at this. come to Djuma, we branch off, but that main road carries a lot of traffic. It's rather unusual that a leopard would actually spend time with brand new cubs on that road, but she did. And the reason, I think one of the reasons why she did, is that a lot of the traffic that travels that road is transient. It just moves through the area, and because there is traffic, there are not many game drive vehicles that actually traverse through that road. And drainage lines that are almost impossible to get into with the vehicle. So one of these days, we're desperate. We're not desperate. Can't say we're desperate. We're itching for the day when if we're lucky, we're going to see her new children, fathered by Mvula, who we saw a couple of days ago. And being live and being the way things work with us on a live drive, all of you anywhere in the world, it would be really nice to interact with you. And in fact, one of the most enjoyable things about, sorry, I can't say that it's the most enjoyable, because the most enjoyable is sitting with an elephant or something. But the second most enjoyable thing about being on a live drive is the interaction that we can have with you. Well, maybe that's the most enjoyable, that we can sit in with an animal and be able to interact with anyone anywhere in the world. I'm not trying to list my priorities here. Well, yes I am. But it is amazing. You can talk to each other, even if it's through Alex in Final Control. Even if it's through Alex in Final Control. So do send questions. Questions can be sent via #SafariLive. If you understand Twitter, some of us are full twits about Twitter, and we're only learning the full extent of what Twitter can really do. Forget about you. I think when you talk about many, I would think that Nyala perhaps is one species introduced, or might have even been reintroduced. I doubt whether it was reintroduced. But I need to research further the historical distribution of the Nyala, because as far as I'm aware, Nyala mostly only occurred down in KwaZulu-Natal, in one of our suburbs or provinces. along the southeastern coast of South Africa, and that many years ago there were no nyala in this area, but there were a lot of properties that introduced nyala for various reasons, mostly because there was a great diversity of antelope. But if people wanted to see a nyala, they would have had to go to KwaZulu-Natal, and in order to satisfy people's need to sort of cross certain species off the list, for whatever reason that might have been. Hello, Ellie. Okay, Chris, we're going to get back to your question shortly, because I've got a lovely Ellie bull. He looks kind of familiar. Got a big shark bite out of his left ear. And I'm just going to try and get, please bring the leg in please. Yeah, it's just on the gauge. Oh, this is the boy that's got a half trunk. Jambo Bona. I remember meeting an elephant like this in East Africa, and I need to get my binoculars out. Now I want to just mention that nature is resilient, and animals that have met with some mishap over time have amazing powers of recovery and ability to adapt to changes in their physiology like this, which is, who knows what it was that might have caused his trunk to or to lose his trunk. I have come across this on many occasions, or not many, on several occasions between here and East Africa, Tanzania, even in Kenya. Unfortunately, very often it's due to a snare, getting the trunk caught in a snare. But I have heard from some elephant people that it is also possible that an elephant just puts his trunk in the wrong place. Now, it's a very important greeting between elephants, particularly if they haven't seen each other for a while, is to put their trunks in each other's mouths, and maybe in trying to placate another elephant might have done that. I personally don't really believe that it could have been an elephant biting it. There's a possibility of maybe snake bite causing a cytotoxic necrosis. I'm trying to see how well that's healed, and I also want not to worry, I've got a number in my head. Very interesting. See, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted him to calm down enough so that we could actually watch him eating, and what he had just done was very interesting. I was just listening to my radio while he was doing it, so I couldn't comment. But one of the very important functions of a tusk, in fact the most important trunk, the most important function is eating and drinking. And elephants who have lost part of their trunk, I've noticed them using just their mouth, or maybe just using part of their trunk to guide food to their mouth. But what was interesting now is there are nice long grasses, green grasses, and he managed to pinch the grass between his trunk and his tusk. Now grasses are also pretty important for their diet, as much as eating bark and branches and roughage are important. So his ability to adapt, not having the two little fingers at the end of his trunk, and being able to either use his feet, and I can tell you some wonderful stories of elephants who've lost the tip of their trunk, who are able to adapt remarkably well and either use their trunk and their feet, or their trunk and their tusks, and they maintain their status, they maintain their health, they're able to adjust, much as humans are, those of us who are unfortunate enough to come across, or rather to have an accident and find ourselves restricted by limb loss, or people who are born with restrictions, and how people are able to to adjust. I can remember, I can't, and I wish I could remember his name. There's a chap from Australia who was born without arms and legs, yet he has done probably more stuff in his life than I have, a fully abled person. And one shouldn't feel sorry for him. One should actually look at him in awe and honor, because he's able to still do whatever he needs to do, and it hasn't hindered him in any way. There's nothing one can do. You can't fit a prosthesis, or I can see him feeding now. He's using the tip of his trunk to what's left of what is the tip now. He's picking branches. He's doing absolutely fine. Anything around mouth height he's able to bite with his mouth and pull off, whether it's branches or leaves. He was showing some nervousness with us driving, but he's calmed down now that we've stopped. So I'm hoping he's going to let us watch him a while, and I'm very interested to watch him. I'm interested to see how he's adapted. You can see how he's manipulating branches with the stump of his trunk. It's a little bit pink on the inside, but it looks pretty well healed. There's a lot of tannin and a lot of vegetation, green marks from vegetation on the tip, so it looks like it's calloused enough where it was severed, that it's not causing him any pain, it's not causing him any discomfort. I thought I recognized that hole in that gash in his ear, but I can't say that I've ever seen this ellie before. I'm going to find a better position, and hopefully we're going to be able to sit with him for a while, and you'll come back to me at some point. But right now Scott's got something for you, so we're going to switch over to Scott, and I'll catch up with you in a few minutes, or as and when you come back to me. So we'll see you in a little while. I'm staying with this ellie. I'm not going anywhere for the moment.
Welcome back, folks. This morning I forgot to ask about warthogs, and apologies for that, but I did promise that we'd come and look for them this afternoon, and we've hit the jackpots. We have found the female that I was hoping on finding, and she's got her little piglets with her. So stand by for some entertainment from these little critters. So as I mentioned this morning, habitat is the main factor that causes warthog to be not so common in this area. We don't have enough of these short, grassy, open clearings, which they like from a feeding perspective and a safety perspective. But nonetheless, we've managed to find some warthog eventually. So the three youngsters that we can see would have been born certainly not much longer than a month ago, I would guess. And their older brother from last year's litter is feeding behind them. He will move off in the coming months on his own, and the survivors of those three piglets will stay with their mother until the next litter is born. And then, just like the older brother, they will move off over time. And there's another three kind of sub-adults in the background. They seem to have possibly been booted out already by their mother, but I'm sure they are from a different family. Oh, we've got one piglet that's trying to suckle. I'm just gonna try and move a little bit closer and stay with them. They are so small that we do need to try and get a little bit closer to them so that you can see what's going on. The mother just gave us off a good back scratch on this bush willow tree. Oh, there go the piglets with their tails up. Awesome. It's a characteristic of warthog, erecting their tail as they run, and this allows other members of their sounder to follow them through longer grass. It's a follow me signal and adaptation, and for us it's just good humour seeing them running along with their tails in the air. Going to try and get ahead of them slightly and let them feed towards us, so bear with me for a moment. Oh, we're seeing a few big buffalo bulls over there, but they are being upstaged by the smaller warthogs today. I'll just get my binoculars out and have a closer look at these warthogs so we can try and get potentially any markings on the youngsters that may help us differentiate them in the future. Oh, okay, well there's off the first marking. The individual closest to the mother has got quite a big scratch on its back left leg. So that is one differentiating factor that we can use going forward. The other two look very, very similar. Ooh, there we go. Very protective mother we have here. Wonderful. Watch the little piglets. Oh, tails up in the air. Oh, this is wonderful. You can hear the little piglets giving out little squeals. Obviously proud of their mother. Now that's the mother with her son. Did you get that, Brian?
Yep.
Well done, sir. Well done. That was really cool. Just had a question come through from James on Twitter. Good afternoon, James, and welcome on board. James has asked why they go down onto their elbows or knees to feed, and I was waiting for somebody to ask that question rather than just letting you all know. Like most pigs, warthog have got a very shovel-like snout that they use just like a shovel. So by going down onto their knees, it creates a better angle for leverage, and just for even if they're not shoveling the grass, it allows them to feed at a more comfortable angle than having to bend their head down. Oh, that's cute. Look at them all go. So James, yeah, it's simply just to make life easier for their feeding. They do it commonly wherever you find warthog, and it just gets them a little bit lower to the ground, and they feed a lot on roots, and the closer they get to those roots, the easier it is for them to get out. So let's wish those warthogs all the best. It's when they head into thick areas like this that things can go wrong for them. So I'm guessing at this stage of the afternoon she'll actually be heading back to their burrow. It would be a termite mound, an excavation in an old termite mound that they will all reverse into. And by reversing into the termite mound, if any threats come from the front, she can come charging out head first with her tusks. I've once seen a young male leopard lying on top of a termite mound, and it obviously done this several times. It knew of the termite mound, it knew that it was active with a warthog family, and the warthogs had tiny little piglets. And warthogs have quite a relaxed start to their day. They don't get up too early, and they kind of lie with their nose just poking out the entrance of their burrow in the termite mound until they feel safe. Obviously, leaving a termite mound in the morning must be an exceptionally scary experience because you don't really know what's waiting on top of the termite mound. And this was the case one fine morning when I was watching a young male leopard. He was lying perched right above the exit hole, waiting for these warthog to come out. And I couldn't believe how incredible it was, because every single warthog made it out that hole before the leopard managed to pounce. And we all know that leopard are extremely agile and speedy animals, so I was quite shocked that the leopard didn't manage to grab one, lying literally on top of the termite mound within which their burrow was excavated. So they are evolved and adapted to escape, don't get me wrong, but it is in this thicker vegetation that things do become dangerous for them. Now, we got lucky with the timing there, and that's important to take knowledge of, or take note of. Brian's just showing you some of the clouds this afternoon, which have cleared up, which is wonderful. Earlier there were a lot of cumulonimbus clouds, which are very big, white, vertical, puffy clouds with black bases, but they have seemed to move off, which is great, so it doesn't look like we're going to get wet. But yeah, very lucky with the timing so far this afternoon, folks. We got here, spent 5 good minutes with the warthogs, and then you can see they disappeared into vegetation where it would be impossible for us to follow them and view them. So, okay, so there's a bird there, and I've been watching it for a few minutes now. It's a lilac-breasted roller. It's a very pretty bird. And what we're going to do is we're just going to spend a few minutes here. When they fly, their real beauty is really exhibited, because a lot of their most electric colors are underneath the wings or in the wing feathers. And you heard me going, earlier it had just taken off and it was flying straight towards us, doing a spectacular show. And what it will be doing is it'll be perched there, waiting for any insects or bugs to fly up, and then it'll swoop down and catch them, often on the wings, sometimes on the ground. But what I'm going to risk doing is heading a few meters closer and then waiting for him to perform his next hunt, or her hunt. I'm not sure exactly if it's a male or a female. Oh, it's looking like it might be coming soon. Or was it just repositioning? What do you think, Brian?
I think it's about to fly.
Okay. We'll give it a few moments then. It certainly is looking around as a hungry roller would in search of prey. Now their cousin, the European roller, has just arrived all the way from Europe. I saw my first one, and Mark actually saw his first one. We both saw our first European rollers for this season on the same day, which was about 4 days ago, but haven't seen any since. Now the European roller is not as impressive, in my opinion, as the lilac-breasted roller, which we are viewing now, but still a very pretty bird. And nice of it to come all the way from Europe to spend its summer here. It'd be nice being a bird that migrates. You just on an endless summer throughout your life, following the sunshine. So now it's preparing its flight gear for its next attack, its next aerial assault. Okay, Brian, should we creep forward? We are going to creep forward a little bit, try and get you a tighter shot while he does sit there preening himself. And that way, at least you got a better view of him until he does take off again. Okay. Now the problem that Brian faces is that it could take off in any kind of direction, so at a high speed. So it'll be an extreme challenge to capture it if it does fly down and attack a little insect. But it's worth waiting for. We haven't, well, I haven't at least spent enough time with these birds. They're really beautiful, and watching them hunt is good entertainment. Sure. I've eventually just lifted up my binoculars now, and it really does exaggerate or emphasize how beautiful it is when you do get a little bit closer up on it. And I'm sure you guys are viewing at quite a tight angle from the distance we're at, which is wonderful. Also, the dark clouds in the background certainly help the contrast. It's certainly scanning about, looking for any signs of life on the ground. Obviously, it chooses to hunt in an area with short grass like this because it's easier for it to see potential prey items. I guess it's a trade-off between potentially there being more insects and bugs and longer grass, but less likelihood of being able to actually see them. And unless you can see them, catching them would be impossible. Now, despite this bird being exceptionally pretty, it doesn't have the best call. Now, there's a bird calling in the background, kind of a, and I'm not sure if you can hear it, but that is a beautiful call, and that's a black-headed oriole. The lilac-breasted roller's call is sadly quite a loud squawk, an attractive squawk. I will certainly point it out again when we hear it. We did hear one squawking this morning when we were watching the rattling cisticola and a few other birds that were calling around us. There we go. Boom. Boom. Has it got something?
Yep.
Oh, a little hors d'oeuvre. Great stuff. Well, folks, that is a seriously beautiful bird you've just witnessed hunting. Aerial attack from a lilac-breasted roller. I'm happy with that. I hope you enjoyed it. How did it go, Brian? Did you manage to... Okay, Brian's happy with the filming, so I'm happy that he managed to capture it with all the pressure that I built up for him. And on that note, I think we can continue. This little patch provided us with some wonderful entertainment from that family of warthogs, the mother chasing away those sub-adults that were obviously getting a bit too close to her piglets. And then the lilac-breasted roller making a kill. Now my plan is to head northwestern of our property, Karula, to area we or they have been followed. She has been followed for many years with WildEarth and Juma. She's a resident female. People have witnessed her raise 7 out of 8 cubs to maturity, which is an exceptionally high rate of success. And she was seen mating a few months ago with a specific male leopard called Mvula, and according to when she mated, she should have given birth around this stage, possibly a few weeks ago. So we've noticed a large change in her behavior, especially from those people who have spent a lot of time here over the last years. I'm still a newbie, so I'm learning the ropes. But from what I've heard, she's changed her behavior. She's headed into an area where she has given birth before. And because she hasn't been seen, we do think she may be focusing a lot of her attention on obviously raising her cubs. Now, there's not much or nothing cuter than a small leopard cub, so we will do our best to try and find them, and the starting point is simply driving around the area where she was last seen. So even though that was probably 10 days ago, possibly more, we will spend some time here and hopefully get lucky with some tracks, or who knows what we'll find. But my plan is to try and find her. If my reception breaks up, folks, you might switch over back to Mark. I am heading into an area that I know sometimes causes trouble with reception, so be prepared to join Mark, whatever he's up to at the moment. Okay folks, well, like I say, this area is a bit dodgy with signal, and it might be worth checking up on Mark, so we'll see you guys later.
Welcome back to the Jigger. Hi everyone. Welcome back to my side of Juma. We're up on sort of the northeastern area, eastern side of Juma, and a really beautiful afternoon. It's actually, seems to be that the cloud is lifting. Some of the heavy cloud that I thought might turn into thunderstorms didn't really materialize. Unfortunately, I had to leave that early. I wanted to sit with him a while. I wanted to see how he was going to be manipulating what was left of his trunk for feeding. What's interesting is that I've known different elephants, different lengths, or I suppose different lengths of the trunk that has been lost behave in different ways. They had an elephant in East Africa, up in Selous Game Reserve in Tanzania, that had lost perhaps only a few inches of trunk. The two little lips at the tip of the trunk are actually like fingers. I mean, they could pick up a peanut. Oh, we got some buffalo here. I hope you don't mind me talking about elephant while we're sitting with the buffalo. There's only one so far. I don't know if it's a group or a dugger boy. Can't be a lone cow. Could be really unusual. Oh, I see two trotting off. Actually, they're not very social, are they? Well, they're heading in the direction we're going. We might see them. But what was interesting is that this particular elephant when it came to the marula fruiting time, which is around January going to February, the two fingers on the tip of the trunk are vital in picking up small things like marula fruit, and well, I think they could pick up a peanut off of the ground if they had to. So when it comes to losing those two little the two little fingers at the tip of the trunk, it kind of limits an elephant to what or how small or what kind of things that they could possibly eat, and I suppose it prevents them from getting certain things. But he had learned, this particular bull, young bull, had learned how to eat marula fruits by loading them up in his nostrils, in his trunk, like a pea shooter, and then actually popping them in his mouth, sort of 4 or 5 at a time. It was actually one of the funniest things to watch, how he would just sort of load up his trunk with these little marula fruits. They're starting to grow now. We'll probably find some that have fallen on the ground because they get knocked off the tree before they ripen. We'll find some green ones, and I can sort of give you a better idea of how that happened. But nice to see this pan full of water. Those two buffalo are obviously very, very shy because they've run off into very thick bush. And I guess they're not too accustomed to vehicles. They might have come in from the Kruger Park. The surface of this water tells me there's been something in this water, something quite big. There's almost a beach on the edges of the water. And so either those buffalo or elephant, something's been in here today. It'll be very interesting to look for freshwater crabs. A few years ago I found a freshwater crab here, which is so far from the drainage line or the riverbed. It's quite amazing that a crab managed to find its way up here. Very distinctive sign of crab presence is a hole at water level, or just above water level on the edge of the water, that goes down and it actually fills up with water. But the entrance itself is in the open. Now, getting back to a question about introduced species, I was talking about Nyala, and as far as I know, Nyala is probably about the only introduced species of mammal, large mammal. Of course, there are reintroduced species in areas where those particular species once occurred, and they have now been reintroduced because they were either, well, their populations were decimated or wiped out. So you couldn't really include them, because I suppose what we're talking about here are introduced species, alien species, species that don't necessarily belong. And we get a various types of species that one can introduce, and you could get local indigenous species that have never occurred in the area that are introduced into an area, perhaps like the Nyala in some ways. And the Nyala really is the unique size of antelope that it almost compete with kudu, but it will also compete with its other cousin, which is the bush. They're that much of a threat to impala, because I think impala are pretty safe in their niche. Well, they don't have a niche. They're so adaptable in their eating habits that impala, it doesn't really matter. But Nyala, unfortunately, have displaced bushbuck in many places because they're so much of a larger antelope. They're the same family as the bushbuck, same family as the kudu. and sadly they seem to have pushed out bushbuck. When I say pushed out, I don't know where the bushbuck go. Perhaps it's just that they don't breed that well, or maybe there is actual or active persecution of bushbuck by Nyala. I don't know whether that's possible. It would be a very, very interesting study, in fact, to find out the true impact of what has happened to the bushbuck population along these riverine areas, the dense. I've got Nyala up in the Timbavati, and 20 years ago it was unheard of to have Nyala up there. Fine drainage towards, or rather down drainage lines towards main rivers, and from there they then venture up dry riverbeds and into new areas where the vegetation allows them to survive very well. They can browse, especially because their youngsters are the same size as bushbuck. They can browse that level, what we call it the trophic level, the height of browsing. Now browsing we refer to animals that eat leaves as browsers, and a trophic level, or the browse level, is the height at which an animal can reach. So when you have something like the Nyala, they are so much taller than the bushbuck that they browse right up above the level of the bushbuck's browsing or trophic level. Hence they can leave very much behind. And it might appear that there's a lot of vegetation, but of course what happens is the toxin levels in trees can prevent bushbuck from then feeding once Nyala have been there. Oh, there was a dwarf mongoose. Unfortunately, there are introduced species into the country that are making their way into these wild areas. There is a minor bird that comes from India that has been seen in Hoedspruit, and that is frightening, because the minor bird is a bird that is very aggressive towards our indigenous species of birds. They break down nests, they kill the chicks. So far we don't have any European starlings here, but there are European starlings in the country. And it would also be devastating if we had European starlings coming into the national park and starting to displace our local populations of starlings. I think we could go as far as certain insects and smaller things, but I think that at the moment their impact isn't as great as the impact of some of the other larger species. And then of course there are all the plants. There are a number of plant species which have become what we call aggressive invader species, or aggressive alien invaders. One of them is the prickly pear or jointed cactus from South America. There's Lantana camara from South America. There are a few plants. There are trees that have been grown in camps, but fortunately they are neither prolific breeders nor are they able to germinate that well. Things like the flamboyant and the jacaranda and the frangipani, trees that have got really beautiful, even scented flowers that have been planted in camps, not only for shade but also just because of their beauty. But fortunately they don't escape into the wild and become an alien problem in the wild. But the plants that do are plants like the jointed cactus, prickly pear. There's the queen of the night cactus, which I think is actually an illegal alien in this country. And Lantana camara, which grows along the river, the riverine areas, which can be toxic, and it's actually it's a very bad plant to have, but almost impossible to eradicate. In other parts of the country, there are even worse problems with things like silver and black wattle from Australia, brought in for their tannin, the tannin content for the tanning industry. And of course, one only has to look at Australia to see the damage that can be done by introducing species, things like the cane toad and the rabbit and others. So hopefully we can keep things out. Now, Nadav, I'd like you to focus for me on that magnificent nest web with the sun coming through it. Now, one of these days, I'm changing subjects like change gears in the jigger on an uphill. A magnificent web, and this is a web that belongs to the social spider, or the community nest spider. It's one of the only communal spiders we have here. Just hearing squirrels shouting in the distance in this drainage line. Anyways, I'll ignore the squirrels for now. I'm telling you about spiders. One of these days, just after sunset, if we find ourselves up in this part of the world around sunset, these spiders are nocturnal, so we're not going to see any out on the web right now, but they are quite remarkable. This is mostly, in fact, it's only a community of females, and this particular nest must be several years old. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if I stopped and spoke about it 3 or more years ago. And I can tell that by the density of leaves and silk that you can see in the middle there. That's got to be well over a foot long from end to end, left to right, and it's probably got to be about 6 to 8 inches deep at its deepest point. And every year, when the leaves dry off, they become the outer shelter. They almost become sort of the shingles to the outer shelter of the web, because all the fine silk that we see that becomes the catching web actually becomes, it all breaks away. They become quite dormant through the winter months, the dry season. And a lot of the dry debris and old insect husks form almost like a shingle roof, a shingled shelter around the center part of the hub. Each spider has its own little entrance to the web, and each spider will come out and react to any insect that it feels closest to it. Sometimes you'll get a very large insect that gets caught up in the web, and the more spiders that are needed to subdue it and carry it back to the center of the web, to the city as it were, the more will come out and assist. And that's truly a remarkable example of a communal species in the arachnid world, whereas most spiders are solitary. So, something to look forward to maybe in the evening. If we come this way, well, we will. There's going to be a day when we come this way in the evening, I'm sure. If not only to have a look at the spider web. Magnificent, wow. Probably one of the biggest we'll ever see. Been a very hot day, so a lot of animals are only going to start coming out of the woodwork from about now onwards. We did see some kudu after we left the elephant, but they were also pretty shy. They ran off into the bush. Just a group of kudu cows. Hot and humid today, the most beautiful summer's day. Wouldn't have it any other way. And I'm not for I am unfortunately flower. Unfortunately, that's when the lilies come out, and they don't last more than a day. The grass lilies, flay lilies, the crinum lilies.
Welcome back, folks. I believe Mark headed into an area with no signal, so hence the rapid change around with no goodbyes. So myself and Brian have just been ambling along Impala Road, Impala Clearings. Nothing to report from there. my plan from now is to head on to Arethusa, which is another property that we can traverse, where I haven't spent much time up to date. I've kind of focused on getting to know Djuma, which I've kind of got to grips with now, and now it's time to start exploring further afield. So I was there yesterday afternoon. I'd like to spend time there today. I'm about to get an update on the radio from the guides that are working and spend more time on that property. So hopefully they'll have some good news for us. But if not, that is fine, because just because there wasn't anything found this morning doesn't mean that there's nothing there. So we'll see what we can find. There's a beautiful road that I drove the other day that I would like to show Brian, also through a drainage line, and you of course, but some of you were with me yesterday. Brian certainly wasn't. So Brian enjoys the riverbeds and off-roading, so I try and give him his fix as often as I can. There's some elephant trucks heading down this road. I beg your pardon, they were heading up the road, so in the wrong direction for us, but they were here sometime probably this morning, maybe early hours of this morning or last night. We've got a question that's just come through. Good afternoon, Wanda, and welcome again. I know you follow a lot of the drives, so good to have you on board, and thanks for the question. Wanda's asking about these feathers on the dashboard here. Now, these feathers were found this morning. We found them this morning. 2 of them were together. There weren't any others that I could see. The question that you're obviously interested in is what bird they come from. Now, I wish I could tell you with certainty where they come from, but I cannot. What I would like to do is hazard a guess and say that they are vulture feathers. Around the buffalo carcasses that we saw quite recently that the Birmingham boys killed, I got to see a lot of vulture feathers, so I've got images of them fresh in my mind, and these do look very similar to that. But a lot of the raptors or birds of prey have got similar colors, a lot of varying shades of brown, and they do have similar sized feathers. So I'm not entirely sure, but we're going to go with vulture. If you've got any other suggestions that you'd like it to be or think it could be, I'm happy to have one vulture feather and another feather from another bird of your choice. But at the moment they are just feathers. We have got them for a little bit of decoration. Zanele is a lady and she needs, I felt, a little bit of a makeover. So it started with the feathers, and we will see what else we can decorate her with as time goes by. So yeah, I'm enjoying them. I hope you are too. And now I've just had a quick look at the map and established that we are on Knobthorn Road. Now, a knobthorn is a kind of tree. This is one of them on our left hand side right here. Their leaves are very distinctive in that they look like Mickey Mouse ears. If you kind of hold them up like that, you get that Mickey Mouse ear effect. So that's the Mickey Mouse ears of the knobthorn tree. They've got very many curved thorns on them, so not a tree that you would like to brush past when you are driving on these open vehicles. And now this is a young individual, so you can't see, it hasn't developed the knobs that obviously a knobthorn tree, which does have prominent knobs, or almost spiny knobs that grow out of the bark or the trunk of the tree. Elephants enjoy stripping this bark off knobthorn trees, and there's a lot of them around that we'll see dead from being ringbarked by elephant. There is one on our right, not very close, but it's a common tree in this area to see dead like this, and it would have been killed by elephants, but a useful tree when it is dead because it allows a lot of birds to perch in it, especially vultures with their big wingspans. In this situation we have a Cape turtle dove preening itself on the top left of the tree. So yeah, a lot of the roads in these areas are named after trees or potentially animals that were seen there many years ago. So I just thought I'd let you know that we were on Knobthorn Pan Road. The Cape turtle dove's calling for us, which is wonderful. There's a few different sayings which can help you remember this call. One is work harder, or drink lager, then it stopped. But those are two little rhymes that you can use to remember the call of the Cape turtle dove. It's a common call, but a call that I really like, and if I'm ever overseas or away from home, away from the bush, and I hear that call on a documentary, it makes me a little bit homesick. Alex, go ahead with your question, buddy. I'm ready for it. Okay, we've just got a question through from Brian on email, and he has asked whether I've seen any bee eaters around. And funny you ask, Brian, because while you guys were over with Mark, I saw that the first European bee eater of the season. So, well, for me personally. So with the lilac-breasted roller, I mentioned that I had seen the European roller very recently. It's come all the way from Europe, and then 20 minutes later, sure enough, the first European bee eater popped up. So I did see it. There was a brief glimpse and it flew off, but the fact that one is here means more are on the way, which is great. And there are little bee eaters that occur here throughout the year, but I haven't seen many of them, and because they're so small, it makes filming them and showing you guys quite tricky. But I will be sure, Brian, to stop at the next possible bee eater sighting. Something to look forward to is that carmine bee eater should be here also within the next few weeks, potentially a little bit longer than that, depending on many variables that affects migration times ever so slightly between different animals over different years. So Brian, good question. We do get bee eaters here. Little bee eaters are here throughout the year. European and carmine migrate here for the summer, so that is something to look forward to. This is another knobthorn tree, and we have one knobthorn tree here. As you can see, the bark would have been, or has been, peeled off around the base of the trunk, therefore preventing any transport up to the leaves, resulting in the death of this tree. And there's this one and another three straight in front of us, so you get an idea of how prominent the knobthorn trees are in this area. And rather than just showing you dead ones, we can also show you a living one, which is directly to our left. Sorry, Brian, I'm having Brian shuffle around the back here to get these angles. But there's a big one on our left-hand side. So that is what they look like when they have got their clothes on. And I'll still need to find a good example of one that is displaying its knobs. That causes them their name. Okay, now this Birchall starling's just arrived in the top of this dead knobthorn tree with what looks to be I don't know if it's a kill or a piece of nesting material. Let me try and have a closer look. Some nesting material. So let's see where it's building its nest. Because it wouldn't be carrying nesting material around unless it was building its nest nearby. So hopefully it's gonna show us. Okay. One brings the material, the other one uses it to build. Oh no. One throws it away in disgust. Well, I don't know how to read into that, folks, but it certainly wasn't an edible. It was certainly a branch that you would presume they would have been carrying for a bit of nesting material. These Birchall starlings do nest in cavities in trees, and dead trees are more likely to have cavities in them than living trees. So I was hoping they were going to show us where they were going to be doing the nesting for this year, but sadly not. Now, what we can show you from this view is the clouds coming through. So in the distance you can see these beautiful big cumulonimbus clouds that are gathering some major momentum, and they are coming in our direction. So that is south, the direction we are facing, and that's typically where we get the majority of our storms from. So hopefully we'll make it through this afternoon's drive without getting caught by that, but that does mean trouble. There is a chance it could obviously pass either side of us, to the east of us or to the west of us. But wherever that does decide to do its business, people are going to get wet. Really beautiful scene though. Dramatic bank of clouds on its way in. And I've just got a message through from Alex in the control room saying that the viewers prefer to remember the Cape Turtle Dove's call by the drink lager saying, as opposed to the work harder. And I tend to agree with you guys, so I'm glad we're on the same page there. Oh, the temperature is so cool and crisp this afternoon, which is a welcome relief after this morning's drive. This morning it was baking. Okay, we've just got a question through from Brenda in Pennsylvania, and she's asking whether there's any chance of seeing any hummingbirds here. Now, as much as I would love to say yes, the answer is no. I've never actually seen a hummingbird in my whole entire life, and you only get them in certain places. I think South America is one of them, but as far as I know, it's typically quite tropical, jungle-like environments that you do find hummingbirds. I stand to be corrected on this. I know you do not get any hummingbirds in southern Africa and potentially in Africa as a whole continent. We do have a similar bird called the sunbird. It's often equally as beautiful and pretty as the hummingbird, and they also feed on the nectar from flowers, but they don't hover. They don't have that incredible ability to hover while they suck out the nectar from flowers. They actually land and use their long recurved beak to be able to suckle on that nectar. But good question, and I'm glad we've got some birders on board this afternoon, because there are some beautiful birds around at the moment, and the further we go into summer, the more migratory birds will arrive, so there are more highlights to look forward to, one of which is the carmine bee-eater. In terms of sunbirds in this area, it's difficult to see them out in the field. As soon as the plants start flowering, we will have a slightly better chance. Some more plants start flowering. Typically a good time in the low veld in this area to see sunbirds is winter, because a lot of the succulent plants, your aloes, are flowering, and in those areas I've found some of my best sunbird viewing in this area. But sadly that's only in the winter. Excuse me for a second, I just need to move this branch off the road. Okay. Also nice just to stretch the legs every now and then. If any of you have been seated for too long, take a walk. It's an important part of the safari experience. Just to stretch the legs, get the blood flowing, and then get comfortable again. Depending on what time of the year it is, wherever you may be watching from, there's various different beverages that you could acquire for yourself. Preferably tea or coffee if it's the morning, or potentially a beer or a gin and tonic if it's the evening. A gin and tonic is a very popular drink in these parts, or on general in safari, as a sundowner choice. So that is something to bear in mind. Possibly one of the most drunk drinks whilst watching the sunset in Africa. What I should probably do is get a hold of the guides in this area and let them know that I'm around, snooping about. Good afternoon, stations. Are there any updates? Can anybody copy me? Not ideal, but sadly it appears that nobody can copy my transmissions. Either that or they're avoiding me, one of the two. I would like to think it's too soon in our relationship for them to be avoiding me. I haven't had time to do anything wrong yet. Not that I plan on doing so, but who knows what it could be. Good afternoon. Can anybody copy me? Oh well. Well, this, folks, is Zebra Drive that we've just turned onto, and Brian and I had a great sighting here, very exciting situation the other day, the first time I actually came onto Arethusa, and we were sitting watching a herd of elephants on the road, and all of a sudden some kudu started alarm calling and then came running past the screen. And we did have a look around, but couldn't find whatever had alarmed them. But later that afternoon, Tingana, the male leopard, was found. So it was obviously him who was slinking about, but we didn't sadly have any fortune finding him. But it was really exciting responding to the alarm calls of the kudu initially, and then the squirrels a bit later. Okay, well, somebody's just given us some updates on the hummingbirds. Thanks very much for that. And apparently they are only found in the Americas, all the way from Canada to South America. They've got some migratory paths that they follow during the different seasons. So if you would like to see a hummingbird, the Americas is the place to go for that. Thank you very much for that information. It's really helpful being supported by you guys with that kind of intel while we're out here. Okay. Well, I've just seen a bird that I haven't showed you guys yet personally. But whether we are going to be able to get the camera onto it is another story. Certainly worth a try though. Well done, Brian. I can't see it, but he can. I heard a rattling testicular let off a little bit of an alarm call, and rightfully so. The bird that I would like to show you is called the Burchell's cuckoo, I think. I can't see it anymore. Brian can. I can't see what Brian can see, so it's all a bit confusing or difficult for us to establish what's what. But it should be a bird with brown wings and a blackish head with a white stomach. And it's a predatory bird. It doesn't look exactly like an eagle or a bird of prey typically would, but it is strictly carnivorous, and it feeds often on chicks, baby birds. So the rattling testicular is certainly allowed to let off an alarm if that Burchell's cuckoo does come any closer to it. Do you think it might pop out there, Brian, or? I can't even.
Termite mound, or sandy rock thing.
Yeah.
Left, that dead tree.
Yeah.
Left of that in there.
Okay. Let's give it a moment or two. It's a pretty bird and quite a secretive bird. It's also known as a rain bird, and it's got a very nice call that sounds like kind of running water through a pipe. No, that's not a good description. It's kind of goes so kind of like water dropping, I guess, at a high rate. And it's termed the rain bird. Some people say it calls before rain. I tend to disagree with that personally, unless I just haven't been exposed to the right. Oh, isn't it? It's the wrong bird you guys are looking at. That's the problem with not being able to see the monitor, guys, and or what Brian can see. But let's try and work out what it is. I can see. Yeah, no, that is it. It's got that dark head. I can see the one with the dark black head and the white bars on its throat. Hey? Is that a different one to what you can see? Oh, strange. Oh, hold on.
I think that little one there.
Oh, that tiny thing!
Yeah.
Okay, that's the rattling testicular. And the bird that you may have just seen fly through frame there, no, was a striped cuckoo or a Lavalian's cuckoo. It was not a rainbird or a Birchall's cuckoo. It was a cuckoo, not a cuckoo, and you didn't get to see it, so I'm sorry about that, folks. But these things happen, and we will just move on from this and learn from it. So the small bird that you were viewing, I'm pretty sure was a rattling testicular. The bird that I thought was the Birchall's cuckoo was in fact a striped cuckoo, or Lavalian's cuckoo is another name for it. I want to try and establish what the problem could be with this radio. Are any stations mobile? Are any Arethusa stations on this channel? Okay, well, it appears we are on our own this afternoon, folks, and there's nothing wrong with that. I do certainly enjoy less radio traffic than more, and the fact that we've got, apparently, well, it appears that we may have this whole place to ourselves, which is great. It's very difficult to drive through a little depression like that with a sandy riverbed running across the road without stopping to check for any trucks or anything exciting. Brian and I were chatting a little bit earlier about where we saw quarantine yesterday morning, yesterday afternoon, and we checked that same depression where he was lying this afternoon as we drove past. So once you've seen an animal in one place, especially lion or leopard, you tend to check that same spot every time you drive past again. Not entirely. Alex, can you go again with that message, please? Sorry, couldn't hear what you were saying. Okay, folks, well, it's always nice to chop and change between the two vehicles, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, the the beauty of the Safari option for you guys is that you do get to experience two different vehicles traversing, which means your chances of seeing something are that much greater than just being on this vehicle entirely. So let's head over back to Mark and see what he's been up to, and we will catch up with you a little bit later. I wonder if there are any tracks.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm relearning roads, and I'm also relearning areas with the new systems of where I'm going to lose you so that I can try and maintain at least a decent signal. I can't rely on the old days where we used to lose signal in the dips, which is going to happen shortly because we've got to go through this dip, but once we're on the other side of it, we're going to be fine. But it's also wonderful to see areas, and there's one little section that I haven't seen in the last few days that I'm relearning, and just seeing how the rains have changed things over the years. Ordinarily the change wouldn't be as great or as distinct, but we had an exceptional flood over January of 2012, and then even last year, January, almost on the anniversary of the 2012 floods, we had also exceptionally heavy rains. There might have been other rains down here in the Sabi Sand that were different to the rains that I had north of here in the Timbavati, because essentially I am almost due north of here. But it's quite interesting to see how the rainfall varies and how it changes so dramatically in such a short space of time or such a short distance. Well, we're going to be making our way back towards Gowrie Dam eventually. We're going to take a few detours in the interim. I'm looking for tracks, nothing in particular. I don't want to try and jinx it, but I'm looking for tracks of anything that I can find, just to give me an idea of what animals are moving where. It's not necessarily that we need to follow tracks, but one does need to keep track of tracks. You need to keep track of animal movement. For example, the numbers of elephant tracks that I've seen. Saw some old leopard tracks that had headed up sort of to the east. Not so old, probably early this morning. Leopard tracks that went straight up Central Road, almost from Vuyatela all the way east onto Torchwood. They do have a leopard on Torchwood. I don't know who it is yet, but of course it's across our boundaries that we can't get to. So I think maybe what we'll do is, I think there are a couple of questions that we can answer that can get some interaction going between you, the viewer, and me, the naturalist. Questions at WildEarth.tv, and there we have one. If you going through here. Oh, put in a whole concrete crossing here. Blue Jay in Illinois. Ah, Blue Jay. The difference between rock and water monitors. We're going to go up Gowrie Cut Line, get onto Biffles and Cut Line. Well, apart from the habitat, I suppose you're asking specifically regarding the physiological differences, I guess, how to tell the two apart. But of course, the one thing one has to remember, that when you are trying to identify things, one of the things you can always look at before you before you become puzzled about the choices that you have, is you look at distribution. I mean, especially with birds. That drongo's dive bombing something. There's a raptor in the top of that tree. I wonder if it's an eagle or an owl. Actually is the most beautiful jackalberry, one of the most beautiful I've ever come across. had Karula in this jackalberry. Yeah, there it is. There's a Wahlberg's eagle up there. I don't know if you can see it. Pale-phased Wahlbergs. Probably the same pale-phased Wahlbergs that we've had in over the years. There. Let's switch this off. Okay, Blue Jay. Uncanny how I get asked a question and then I find something. But Wahlberg's eagle, one of the migrants that comes back to the same nesting area in summer. And I could see there was a drongo. Drongo is a type of flycatcher, and just by its behavior, it told me that it was mobbing something, and luckily there's a beautiful gap in the tree. And there's only one eagle really that has this sort of colour morphism. And quite strangely enough, this particular type of eagle, known as the Wahlberg's eagle, comes in a light form and a dark form and somewhat intermediary forms. And you can have a pale phase Wahlbergs mating with the dark phase Wahlbergs, so that they don't really discriminate. This is not what we call leucism. It's not anywhere near albinism. But if you think of melanism, which is animals that have a predominance of melanin, the darker pigments, the opposite of that is leucism. This is not a leucistic bird. There, the drongo is still flying above this Wahlberg's. Now, the Wahlberg's is a bird hunter. That's one of the reasons why the drongo is doing what it is. It's just a pale phase. It's not leucism. It's just a different colour morph. If we're lucky, we might get to see that drongo coming back and jumping on its head. Wahlberg's eagles are probably one of the smallest of what we call the true eagles. They're one of the booted eagles. They have feathers all the way down to the feet. And predominantly bird hunters. I've seen Wahlbergs taking birds in mid-air. I've seen them on hunting francolin. I've seen a Wahlbergs eating a barn owl one morning, which is probably one of the most amazing things I've seen with regards to the Wahlberg's eagle. Could you give us a bit of scale in it? I'm trying to zoom out and try and get sort of as much of the tree in as possible, because we're gonna leave this pretty bird. And this is a magnificent jackalberry, an ebony tree. Hello, Bram, in the Netherlands. There's the drongo, come back again. Oh, we just happened to be zoomed out. There we go. Oh, you can just see it in front. I'm going to stay here. I was going to move on, but I think for now, I'd like to just get a nice shot of, try and get to see this interaction. Bram wants to know if Wahlberg's eagles eat vervet monkeys like the crowned eagles, and the answer is no. Most probably, not most probably, but I guess the main reason for that, Bram, is because the Wahlberg's eagle is half the size of the crowned eagle. The talons on the Wahlbergs are very, very small. It is designed for hunting birds, able to grasp small seed eaters, and I'm sure they eat a lot of other things too, but definitely not likely. They don't have the wingspan. They don't. You see it? Gosh, I'm trying to tell you too much at once. They're a relatively small eagle, relatively small wings. They've got a relatively narrow beak. In fact, that, as I said earlier, they're the smallest of the true eagles, whereas the crowned eagle is probably about the biggest, double the size. The crowned eagle is a specialist in primates. The crowned eagle lives in thick forest. But what is so special about the crowned eagle is that it has exceptionally broad wings that allow it to grasp a monkey, whether it's a vervet or a samango monkey, and fly almost vertical up into the tree canopy with it, or through the tree canopy. A Wahlberg's, on the other hand, doesn't have those broad wings and strong talons to be able to lift that great a prey into a tree as a crowned eagle can. If I can quickly have a look at the difference in the size, if I can get you an idea while we're chatting. Give you an idea. Wahlberg's eagle has got a wingspan of about 45 centimeters, so call it what, just under 20 inches. No, sorry, that's tall. So 141 centimeter wingspan, so 101.4 meter wingspan, as opposed to about a 2 meter wingspan of a crowned eagle. The crowned, I mean, the Wahlberg's 45 centimeters tall, which is roughly 20 inches, as opposed to a crowned eagle that stands probably, trying to guess, but I can't, I'm not going to, I'm just going to look it up in the book. Crowned eagle stands 75 centimeters, which is about 30 inches. So crowned eagle, a good 10 inches taller than the Wahlberg's, and a wingspan of at least 20 inches longer, or 50 centimeters longer. There's that there's just off there at the bottom. No, I was just going to say that we can see that storm brewing. If we go back, sorry, Nadav, look at that magnificent anvil. Now let's zoom out a bit, please, just to get a view of that huge anvil brewing in the south. Something that I haven't seen for so many years. Very typical late afternoon thunderstorm that is turning into a mushroom that, who knows, might wet my hat. It is also going to produce some really beautiful colors as the sun sets. Well, let's move along. I can get back to Blue Jay's question and about the monitor lizards. Beautiful sighting of that Wahlberg. There used to be a pale-faced Wahlberg's eagle that used to nest in the drainage line below Gowrie Dam. I wonder if it's not maybe the same eagle. There are a number of viewers that have been viewing from many years ago that know what I'm talking about. We used to have giant eagle owls in there. Big jackalberry, big ebony. So the monitor lizards. We have the water monitor lizard, whose habitat is naturally anywhere around water, dams, rivers, lakes. They are excellent swimmers, and they are pretty much dependent on the aquatic habitat that they live in based on the prey that they eat. They are even known to dig up and eat crocodile eggs. They're known to actually eat juvenile crocodiles, hatchling crocodiles. They're quite tenacious. They're known to catch birds. They can become quite large. So a nyala. Oh, she's moving off. Don't move. She's got a baby behind the bush. Hello, pretty girl. And I can try and turn around and see if we can see them. There's a nice little youngster there, and I can see others further in. Oh, that's a bit difficult, but thanks, Nadav. Let's try and get a. Maybe we'll get a. We'll have to find some nyala in the open area a little bit later. Unless I can turn in here and we get a view of her and the little one. There we go. Not quite little one. There we go. Come little one. Come out into the open. A few months old. Very pretty for an antelope that doesn't belong. Spelled N-Y-A-L-A, Nyala. Now they are what we call one of the spiral-horned antelope. Family of antelope whose males all have spiral horn, just like the kudu. The other members of the family include the bushbuck. In Botswana and in Zambia, in the marshy regions, we get an animal known as the sitatunga, a really beautiful, kind of a cross between a nyala and a bushbuck and something entirely unique. And the sitatunga has a semi-aquatic habitat, has very unique hooves to be able to press down vegetation to help it help not sink into vegetation as other antelope would. It's got exceptionally long hooves that tend to press down vegetation and make a mat to stand on rather than sinking through, so that they can move through swampland and marshland almost two-thirds, almost submerged in fact, to get grazing on a host of sedges and grasses. Okay, I think we're not going to be able to see them much better. They're moving into some thicker stuff and it's going to be rather awkward to get a view of them. But there are a lot of nyala, or not a lot, but there are nyala around. And I'm just going to get back to the monitor lizard, because I don't think I've quite finished with the monitor lizards yet. So the water monitor grows to about 3.5 feet, maybe a bit more. And when you look at the head of the water monitor, and I suppose what I could do actually is I could show you photographs while I'm talking about them. In fact, I can stop a little bit further on and I can give you a picture so that we can know for future reference. Just open the library, put the raptor book away, move the frogs, find the reptiles. I hope the reptiles are here. Here they are. A rather flattened head, and of course in the early years the water monitors are very distinctly yellow and green and black striped reptiles. They do tend to change color a little bit, dull with age. The rock monitor, which is also known as a white-throated monitor, it's also known as a tree monitor, has a very, very what's the word? Stubby head. It's almost got like this pronounced bump on its head. I'll get it for you now. Let me just stop and see if we can focus on some of these pictures. This is a juvenile, one of the juvenile water monitors. Beautiful markings when they are a juvenile. Try and orient it with the camera. There we go, nice and square. Now, here we go. This is the sort of stubby head of the rock monitor, known as Varanus albi. Maybe just zoom in without the... Okay, I'm going to give credit to this book shortly, because I think I should. You can see how rounded that face is. A lot scalier in a way, exceptionally long claws, known as Varanus albigularis. Let's try that one over here. Gives you another idea of the face of the rock monitor. That's a juvenile, still got very distinct markings. They tend to become a lot grayer with age, whereas the water monitor, the Nile monitor, Niloticus, slightly different markings, but a much more lizard-like head. And then I'm just going to move the book. There's an adult, or slightly older, but then this one up here, that is a picture of a large adult, probably digging in a termite mound. They have unique habits of digging into termite mounds, laying their eggs within the termite mound, and using the temperature of the termite mound to help to incubate the eggs. And they actually will return to the termite mound or the termitarium after 90 days or around 3 months after the eggs have incubated, and help to excavate it, because what happens once they've excavated into the termitarium, the termites will close it up, and they need to get in there to open it up for them. But our dragons of Africa, both related to the dragons of Komodo, and the... Why isn't this working? Now it is. I think the goannas. Anybody in Australia? Maybe goannas, or there are monitors in Australia through the islands of Indonesia. I think all over the world there are types of monitors that are all related. They all either belong to the genus Varanus, Varan in German, if I'm not mistaken. Varanus is its scientific genus. Right, let's see, let's change the subject. Who's next? Well, it's great to hear that we have a school with us, and we've got a class, Miss Billings' class, 3rd graders. Hi kids, hello everybody. I'd love to meet you all. And they're asking about all my pets. Lots of pets out here. I've got pet elephants and pet leopards. No, they're not pets, they're my family. But the kids, the class wants to know if I have any pets at home. And I don't. I have friends at home. I have lizards that know me, that they even sit on my feet when I'm sitting outside. I have a lot of birds that live around me that have gotten used to me, that I tend to drop crumbs for them in winter when their food is pretty low. And there are a bunch of things that live around where I live. I mean, there's some elephants that I know very well. I can't call them my pets. I think I'm their pet. I think that's what it is that I'm their pet more than anything else. But it's very difficult to have domestic or pet animals in the bush because it's very dangerous for them. And sometimes unless they've actually grown up and lived in the bush, it can be quite sad, because they don't, especially domestic animals that come from the city, they tend to fall prey to other animals, and that's not fair on them. There's a bird here in the tree to the left. This is for all the birders out there, especially RC and all the other. But it's earlier on I saw the first one. This is another migrant that has come back to South Africa from further up in Africa. Very pretty little bird. This is the female of that particular. Is that the closest we get? Okay, maybe it's not going to be easy for anyone to identify, but I'll give you a moment to tweet an answer or send an email. I'll give you a hint. It belongs to the shrike family. And maybe I've seen, that's the second female that I've seen. I haven't seen any males. And normally I see them a lot earlier on in December, or even late November. So, pets. There are people that have dogs and sometimes cats in the bush. It's not really wise to have cats, particularly cats, because we have a wildcat here in Africa, which is the African wildcat, and it's very similar. It's probably the ancestor of all the domestic cats. And there's a danger of cats giving diseases to African wildcats, but there's a danger of domestic cats breeding with African wildcats, and that will influence the species. It's bad for the species as a whole. Domestic dogs can bring in diseases that domestic dogs have to populations of wild dog, and wild dog are already an endangered species, so in some cases it's quite detrimental to the local population of wild dog. And it's not really wise to have domestic or pet birds like parrots and things from other countries. And there are problems in the cities, some of the cities, with some species of birds that people have kept as pets that come from other countries, and they've gotten out of their cages and they then become wild, or what we call feral, and they become a danger to the local populations of birds. But I think the main reason that I won't have a pet is because I've had so many friends who have tried to have pets in the bush, and well, I won't make you too sad because it is quite sad, but they get bitten by snakes or eaten by other animals, and it's really not fair that one has to lock them up in the house all day or keep them contained to prevent other animals from getting to them. So I just think it's better. It would be too heartbreaking for me to have a pet and to have it suffer a snake bite or be eaten by a leopard or killed by a baboon. So it's not really fair. And then of course it's not fair to have a wild animal as a pet because, well, they're wild animals. And that looks like a raptor on the ground. Or was it a cuckoo? It was a cuckoo. What was it doing on the ground? I wonder. There have been times when I've been given baby animals to look after, and unfortunately for me personally, I cannot let something suffer. So when I've been given baby things, I'm compelled to raise them. I'm compelled to see it through, but I know that it's going to lead to something sad and bad. And the main reason for that is that we can't teach animals how to be adult animals. We can't teach them about the dangers that they're going to have here in the bush with all the predators. We can't teach them what they need to know to be the type of animal that they are, and they need their own species. So it's very, very bad, and it's very, very sad that some people will take wild animals and make pets out of them, especially some of the animals that live in communities. They live in very tightly knit families, things like mongoose and even lion, anything that lives in a social group, taken out of its environment and put into a human environment, and they're the only animal of their kind. Even the monkeys, for example, where they think that they're human, but they have the limitations of being whatever animal they are, but they're raised in a human environment. So it's really sad that humans think that animals are cute, that they want to have a pet animal, but it's putting an animal through a life of slavery and hell. So I'm not really fond of having pets, other than if you're in the city and you can give a good home to a cat or a dog, or the domestic animals that are over centuries have become pets that can't live in the wild or shouldn't live in the wild. They are wonderful creatures. I mean, a domestic cat has got all the qualities of a big African wild cat, or a big African big cat. Lion, leopard and cheetah. In the domestic cats you can find the qualities of lion, leopard and cheetah. I hope that answers the question. Personally, I don't have any pets. It takes a long time to get to a simple answer. I could have just said no, but I felt I needed to explain. The storm is looking beautiful. I don't know if we can try and turn around and just get another glimpse of it. Just turn so that we can point the camera there through this gap. And keep track of how this huge mushroom is just growing down in the south. That's going to be giving us a light show and maybe a lot of water later on. Might move past, might move by, it might also rain itself out before it gets here. But that is probably pushing up to 25,000 feet. Maybe only about 20. I know storms to reach higher than that. But already that white part of the cloud, you can see the darker part of the cloud underneath it, which is the very low layer. That's probably up to about 5 to 8,000 feet already. So that big white mushroom is probably pushing from maybe 10 to 20,000 feet. That's a big storm brewing. And we're going to keep track of it as just before sunset. It's going to become orange and pink. But lovely to have you back, Miss Billings. There's a great spotted kudu. I hope we're going to be. I hope it's going to stay there. There goes another one. Great spotted cuckoo sitting on where that dead wood are. It's gone. It's sitting on a dead piece of wood. And they're not a very common cuckoo out here in the summer months. Who do we have? Hello. Sabi Sand staff. No answers on the shrike. If anyone guessed it right, it was a redback shrike. Still waiting to see a male. So a couple of answers did come in. Brian. Race and Race is with us. The birders, my usual birders. Brian, I'm sure that's Mr. Tobin. And Raisa, I wouldn't say I forgot about you, Raisa, but I hadn't heard from you, so I wasn't even sure. Thanks, Brian. Love to Heather. Where's RC in the Netherlands today? And if you are birders, please let me know, because we do love to have birders with us, and every now and then, like that, days like today, we've got a huge storm brewing. We've had a very high pressure system come through, some very hot temperatures. It's quite normal that the animals tend to react in a way that, because of the temperature change, and we had cool weather and then hot weather and cool weather, and now today hot and humid. I guess it takes a lot more energy to move around and try and cool their body than it does to just stay in the shade and try and stay cool without using too much energy, as opposed to the opposite sometimes. And what was that about the sausage tree? There's a flower of an albizia. Try and get a little closer to those fluff balls of the false thorn. Flower. There are a number of trees here actually that the flower mainly just consists of the stamens. You don't really see much of the flower itself. I can actually see something moving through that one, because I can see, yeah, that one. What is that moving through that flower? Ant or a beetle? An ant. An ant. An ant. Albizia harveyi, the broadpod albizia. Okay, that's pretty, isn't it? I love this clarity of this new camera. So, I had a question about the sausage tree from, was it Joanne? In Michigan. Oh, there's still sausage trees on Juma. There's just the one sausage tree on Juma. I mean, there is a sausage tree in the camp, but out here in the bush there's only one sausage tree, and we will go past it at some point, and I'll point it out. Unfortunately, we missed the flowering of it. You can remember, some of you who've been with us over time got very excited with the sausage tree flowers a few years ago, and we kept waiting to see if sausages would grow after the flowers. There is one sausage growing that I've noticed on that tree, and we will go and catch up with the sausage tree. I think, who was it? It was Linda was also asking about it a little while ago, Pepperbird, and think one or two other people were asking about the sausage tree, so we do need to go and catch up with the sausage tree. I have a relationship with trees. It's one of those things. I love trees. There's certain trees that I like to watch over time, and that sausage tree was one of them. It was quite sad when we left that I wasn't going to see what would happen to it. And believe it or not, in the last 3 years it hasn't really changed much in size. It's going to take decades before it becomes even resembles a big sausage tree, considering the size of some of the sausage trees I've lived with in East Africa and in the Okavango Delta. I'm sure there are areas in Kruger and up on the rivers of Kruger. I just haven't been there for 30 or 40 years, so I don't recall much about Kruger itself. I suppose one of the things that I live in a part of Kruger. I don't have access to the public part of Kruger, but living within the boundaries of Kruger and having all these animals on my doorstep, I don't get to go into Kruger proper, the public side of Kruger, which I do need to. But the other thing is that my Land Rover wouldn't be allowed in Kruger. I'd probably have to get a special permit. And so I'm going to hand you over to Scott for a little bit. We are both, I think, in the same boat at the moment. I think everybody is listening to the game drive radio. There's not really much out at the moment, and I think a lot of it has got to do with this big thing that's brewing. What precedes a thunderstorm like that is a very, very high pressure system. The animals sense this, and I suppose they're readying themselves for maybe a big storm. But for the time being, I'm going to hand you over to Scott, and I will see you probably a little bit later. We'll maybe find a place for sunset. So, bye for now. See you soon.
Welcome back, folks. Myself and Brian have had an enjoyable drive since we left you. We haven't seen too much, but what we have found is this knobthorn tree, and it is a trophy specimen. It has got many, many knobs on the bark there, and hence the name knobthorn tree. There's also a yellow-billed hornbill cleaning its feathers. So I just thought we'd stop to give you the full knobthorn breakdown, as I said I would from earlier. We just battled to find an appropriate knobthorn with which to show you guys where they get their name from. And then we've also got quite a nice view from up here of all the clouds building in the south. So we thought we'd just be able to give you an update of how the clouds are forming and how things are looking on the southern horizon. And it really is beautiful to look at these clouds from a distance. When they start getting closer, they do become more beautiful, but the chance of them wetting you becomes a lot larger. So this evening I think we will be able to make it back to camp without getting wet, which is a bonus. It is difficult with these vehicles with all the electronics on them when it starts raining. And the last thing we want is a vehicle down and out of action, because that way it would be a lot more difficult to show you guys what's going on out here on safari on Djuma and Arathusa. So we're going to continue, and my plan is to head back to the quarantine area, which I'm hoping will produce a leopard for us. There was quarantine seen there yesterday afternoon, and I beg your pardon, Kunyuma yesterday afternoon was nearby, and there was also tracks this morning of a male leopard in that area. So there's a strong chance that it was still him and he's still lurking about there. And with a bit of luck, we shall find him. I believe Mark has been telling you all about the sausage tree. Really beautiful tree. Sadly, not too many around in this area of the Sabi Sands. Mark mentioned that there was only the one that he knows of on Djuma. Since I've been driving around Arathusa, which has been very limited time, I haven't noticed any sausage trees. But what I have just noticed is that I am a little bit discombobulated and I am driving in an area where I'm not supposed to be. So we are just going to sneak out of this without anyone knowing, other than the rattling testicular which is giving us away. So this is a prime example indicating to you that I have not spent much time on Arathusa, and where I was going with this was that sausage trees are not plentiful here, so I'm not sure if Mark did manage to show you the sausage tree that is on the Djuma property. Either way, we'll keep our eyes peeled on Arathusa now that we do traverse this property. When Mark did a previous stint with WildEarth a few years back here on Djuma at least, they didn't have access to Arathusa, so he also needs to learn this property, and hopefully it will have some sausage trees on it for us. They are beautiful trees. Now, if I was a leopard or a lion, this is the time of day that I would start yawning and stretching and getting ready for the night's adventures. So we can only hold fingers that that is what they will be doing. Okay. Well, that was a good exercise for myself and Brian to explore some new territory, learn some new roads, so that if animals are found there in the future and we do get updates on them, we know where to go immediately. And what we might be able to do is have another look at the hyena den on the way home. It's a good time of the evening to be heading there, and we're not too far from there. Apparently Mark has been there a couple of times over the last few days and also had no luck. So like I said this morning when I was there, there's a strong chance that they may have moved den sites. It's not uncommon from them to chop and change between 5 or 6 different sites within a small kind of area. When I say small, probably within a 2 kilometer radius of one specific den site. And it's also just, you know, the fact that they can move and we can't find them reiterates to you that there are areas of this reserve that we simply can't get to in the vehicles, and even walking you can't cover every square inch of these properties. So that's why you can go for days without seeing certain animals. There are lots of places where we really cannot get to easily. So even though we know that they've moved and they're probably not far away, that doesn't mean we can find them necessarily, which for me is refreshing. If it was as simple as going, well, today we would like to do X, Y, Z, and then if you were able to do it that easily, there'd be not nearly as much adventure and as excitement when exploring this place or places like this. Oh, I've got a question coming through. Sorry, Alex, if you could just go with that question again. I didn't quite understand exactly what was being asked there. Okay, Gwyn has asked a good question, whether animals respond differently to people on foot when they are walking as opposed to people in the vehicle. And the answer to that, Gwyn, is yes. The response to humans on foot is very, very different to that of the vehicle. Because a vehicle is big and animals can hear it coming from a long way, and that coupled with the fact that we've been spending time, many years, 50 years, 55 years in this area photographing animals, they've become used to vehicles. Now, in the beginning, 55 years ago, I'm sure the animals would have been nervous of vehicles. But over time and many, many hours spent viewing at them from a distance, they slowly learned that these vehicles and whatever their vehicle is transporting is not proving any threat. It's simply fitting in neutrally in the ecosystem. So over time, that has happened. And now you can get very close to animals, be it lion, leopard, buffalo, elephants. Depending on their mood and the individual, you can get close to them on a vehicle with almost no response or no reaction from them. Now, it's very different when walking. Animals would tend to also get a fright when you walk up on them. There's less chance of them hearing you. Therefore, the chance of them being startled is greater. And also the fact that you are a lot smaller on your own on a vehicle than on a vehicle. Animals would be a lot more likely to back themselves in a charge or attacking you. So it's certainly a lot more dangerous on foot. But animals may respond aggressively to you on foot, or they could simply flee from you, be it lion or elephant. They could see a human upright, get a fright and run away, and that's typically what they do when you're on foot. But in certain scenarios where they feel they may be cornered, or that when they have young to protect, they could well charge you and attack you. But in short, the basic moral of the story is that in a vehicle, animals in areas where they've been habituated will tolerate you and almost not even regard the fact that you're there, and you are very, very safe in a vehicle. Whereas on foot, animals might respond either aggressively or flee from you, depending on the situation. And it's always going to be a lot more of a dangerous situation on foot. So I hope that answers your question, Gwyn. But it does depend on the individual animal how they respond to you on foot. You get certain prides of lions, certain leopards that don't even growl at you when they see you on foot. So nothing's hard and fast, and that's also an important thing to remember about any story you hear about nature. What I'm saying is a general rule, but there are exceptions to the rule as always. Out here. Hopefully in time to come, Gwen, we'll have the technology available to us that allows us to do walking safaris, and that way you'll be able to see the response of animals on foot. When doing walking safaris, your goal is to not affect the animal in any way. So to get in, view the animal, and get out without that animal knowing that you're there. Now, even though that is the fundamental goal of a good walking safari, that doesn't always happen. It could be that all the factors available to you, you don't know that an animal's there, and you may startle it and it may get upset with you and charge you. That could well happen, or it could get upset and run away from you. Either way, I'm sure it's not too far in the future that you can be waiting to expect some walking safari action. I certainly would love to be involved in that. The walking element of being out here is a whole new world and a whole new experience relative to being in the vehicle, so I hope it's not too long before we can share that with you. In an ideal world, for me personally, I would do a morning walk as my set safari and an afternoon game drive. I mean, obviously you can chop and change, but I would like to do 50-50. And that way you're getting the best of both worlds. I love my photography, so photographically you're typically far better off in a vehicle than out one. But you could get some lucky shots on foot, no doubt. But you're typically going to be getting better sightings from in a vehicle because the animals will respond less to you, be it negatively or positively. They simply don't respond. So being able to photograph them is easier in a vehicle. But getting that adrenaline rush and thrill of being on foot in wild places like this, you understandably cannot achieve whilst in the comfort of a vehicle. So just like most things in life, it's pros and cons to all the different scenarios available to us out here. We're just a few minutes away from the hyena den sites. It is such a beautiful evening, folks. I cannot stress this fact enough. The temperature is perfect. What it is exactly, I don't have a clue, but what I can tell you is that it's nice and cool, and we are as comfortable as could possibly be. Just an excavation. It looked like an old termite mound, and I thought could potentially be another den site that the hyena were using, but that is not the case. Oh cool, we found a warthog. Yeah. Now if we're lucky, we're gonna get to see this guy reverse into his hole like I said they do. But it appears that he's not too interested in our plans. We'll give it a moment or two because it is bedtime for him, so we will wait to see if he comes back and reverses down this big termite mound that you can see is his home. And he was in the kind of entrance to the tunnel, but then just shot out as we arrived, so he got a little bit startled, but hopefully we'll come back and we'll see him reversing in. It's a very still and quiet evening tonight. Not a breath of wind. I certainly can't see where this warthog has gone, but I'm kind of feeling a little bit bad by parking here, because if he is for some reason too scared to come and reverse into his hole, we would be leaving him stranded for a horrible night out. But we will put this one in the memory bank, because warthog tend to sleep in the mornings. If we do come back early one morning, we might get to see him slowly emerging from his hole. It's actually quite nice. You get to see them yawning, which is a strange thing to see a warthog yawn, but you see them yawning in the morning as they're waking up. Now, things aren't looking too promising regarding the hyena. As there's no... Oh, we've hit some luck. There was one individual hiding behind the termite mound that we couldn't see, looking very intently. This is an adult we can see, and looks like it could be starting its night of searching for food. I wonder what it was looking at up there. We're going to try and follow it. Whether we can cross this little riverbed below us, I'm not sure, but we will try to. Yeah, I think we can manage this. Brian, are you holding on?
I'm holding on.
Oh, wonderful. Here we go. These vehicles really are fantastic, folks. I can't stress to you enough how much fun it is to drive them. Now, with a bit more luck, and we may be getting a little bit greedy here, but it's worth a shot. This individual vocalized for us. It's one of my favorite things to hear, hyena vocalizing. And when you're close to them like this and can actually see them doing it, it really is awesome. So we'll stay with it for as long as we can and see what happens. Well, this looks to be like the mother, who we think is pregnant. She's either pregnant or full-bellied at the moment. I'm not too sure which one. And I'm not too sure what she can hear or has seen ahead of her. Time will tell. Or maybe it won't. But by spending time with her now, we will be able to gain insight into what exactly she's going through. Sure. She's an old lady, her teeth are very worn down. Been chewing on lots of bones, it appears. We just saw some lightning off in the distance, just to keep you guys in the loop of what's happening with the weather. I don't think it's anything to be concerned about at this stage. I'm going to try and keep an eye on her from the other side of this valley that we're on. I think she's just found a little puddle to drink from. We'll try and get us there. Well, as you can see, it's slow going in this terrain. But she may be having a drink from a little puddle. Yeah, that's what she's doing. Oh, sorry, Brian. Uh-oh.
Pushed me right into it.
I've got Brian in a thorn tree. I'm just going to reverse a little bit. It's a buffalo thorn, which is a nasty one. He seems to be handling the situation well. Very well, actually. Sorry, buddy. Sorry about that. Now we can just see her head and her licking her lips. There's no ways from here that we would be able to get an angle, but you could imagine a little pool of water that's collected in this little riverbed. And hopefully when she lifts her head up and licks her lips, we will have confirmation that she's drinking, but that is what she's doing. Huh? What on earth is going on down there?
Looks like she's having a bit of a bath.
Okay. Cooling off before her evening out. Let's see if we can creep forward a little bit and work a different angle. Wonderful. Well, Brian was right. That's exactly what she was doing, and we can tell from her wet bottom that she would plonk herself down in this little puddle. She's obviously just doing some housekeeping in the general area of her den site. Not sure where Tapandula is. The young adolescent that Peter named a few weeks back. Taking us on a bit of a run around this lady, but I'm enjoying. Nice to know that there's this little puddle here for the future. Okay, now on the way out, so I'm going to try and not get Brian stuck in the buffalo thorn again. Folks, while we try and regain visual of this hyena, you can maybe check in back with Mark, what he's up to, and if you do stay with him and don't find time to come back, to myself and Brian, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed it, and it's Mark out tomorrow morning, so I will see you all tomorrow afternoon. Thanks very much, have a good one.
Okay, 3, 2. Finally, for me, the end of my day, and a wonderful way to end it, in fact. It was a lovely big bull behind us, but he wasn't very friendly, and managing to spend a bit of time with these two family groups who are very relaxed. It's getting quite... Hello, little one. Hello, baby. Very nice to spend a bit of time with Ellie's at the end of the day. Sort of makes my day, and it helps me sleep better at night, knowing that I've had a bit of time with some pachyderms. Here comes the bull now. I need to move slightly, because we might just miss his greeting. I hope not. She's sort of blown in his direction, but he might not have been speaking to them or been with them yet, but he's coming in. He's probably coming in to test. There we go. He's just having a sniff at her. Baby's putting, youngster, I don't know if you noticed that, putting his trunk in his mouth to greet him. Could be father. Youngster also just getting a whiff of his urine dribbling down his legs. Very important greeting ceremonies. Great to see the different sizes. It's a really, really big bull. And for some reason his presence has moved this whole herd deeper into the bush. And the matriarch's rumbling about him. Pity about that. Always in a dilemma whether to try and reposition myself and whether that's going to influence them. And I knew right then when we arrived here that I had to arrive and stop and switch off and just let them calm down to our presence, of course. And then of course there was the other female coming out, and while she was coming out next to us, I couldn't start up. I should have and could have and would have been a little bit to the west of them and been able to turn around, and it would have been a lot better, because we would have seen this whole interaction of him coming to greet them. But sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have to keep their behavior and their mood in the foremost of your mind, because I really don't want to offend them in any way. And you see, it's all very well if an elephant comes close to you. It's a very different thing for you to try and get close to an elephant, because you can't really do that. It tends to upset them quite a bit. And sometimes if you can position yourself nicely and they are relaxed enough, they might sort of wander close to the vehicle. Unfortunately here, they were quite happy around the vehicle until the bull came along. And once he arrived on the scene, the cows have moved off. They've taken their children away. What he was doing when he arrived, he didn't even greet her properly. She gave him a little bit of a cold shoulder, as it were. But he was intent on testing her urine, and what that is he's testing her status of estrus. And at the same time, the youngster who was with her youngster, wanted to give the old man a greeting, but he kind of brushed the youngster off, didn't really return the greeting. And then the matriarch gave a big rumble, and that was obviously a signal for the herd to move on. He's still feeding here, I think. I can still see some trees moving, but I can't even see him. It's starting to get quite dark. But it's just at a wonderful end to my day. We've been driving around. This storm has flattened out completely. I can't even show you now because the cloud is now above us. But it's flattened out. We've seen a little bit of lightning, and I think most of it has rained out. I think the bulk of it, when we were looking at that lovely big mushroom of cloud, that was when the rain was at its heaviest. A little bit of dark cloud that'll maybe give us a sprinkle on the way home. But for the time being, I think we're safe enough, and that this has passed, or it is broken up. So we're going to turn around and make our way back to quarantine, see if there's anything on quarantine at the moment. On the big open area near camp. Bye, Elise. Thank you. Asanteni sana. Tutaonana kesho. We'll see you tomorrow. Let me put some light on the subject. We'll put that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. Put a light on the subject. Roller, you should be in bed. Oh, baby Roller should be in bed. Sorry, child, didn't even see you there. Would not have expected a Roller to be sitting in the grass next to the road this time of night. Learning how to chase grasshoppers. Now I need to find this little toy. There's another Roller in the grass. That's probably another youngster. I can see some impala further down. But I'd like to be able to get back up onto the open area and see who's coming out onto the open tonight. Probably the wildebeest, no doubt, as well as maybe some zebra if we're lucky. Saw Scott when Scott opened up this afternoon. I drove past, well, I was sort of on the lower road as Scott was opening up to start the drive. I noticed he was with some giraffe, which was very lucky. I'd like to spend some giraffe time too, but tomorrow is another day. And I will be with you first thing in the morning, just after sunrise, and we'll see what has changed overnight. Every day is a new day. Every day there's always the potential for something that wasn't there the day before. It's one of the things that make this so worthwhile and so exciting, in that there's nothing predictable about it. There's no way that you can know where an animal is going to be. Just a matter of trying to find them. I think if we knew where everything was, if we could just drive straight to a lion and straight to a leopard and straight to an elephant, that would be good content. Yes, you'd always have an animal on your screen, but I think it would be rather predictable. That would take away the very aspect or the very element of what makes African wildlife viewing what it is, and that this is an exceptionally vast area. We are in millions of acres of wilderness. Well, no, it's not quite wilderness, but the classical or the definition of wilderness. And animals have freedom of movement, whereas us humans are limited to roads, and occasionally we can go off the road, follow them off road if need be. But with that movement, the predators have to be in a different place every day, otherwise the prey species get used to where they are and avoid them, and hunting becomes almost impossible. And the prey species have to move around to get new grazing or new browsing every day. But also if they stayed in the same place, the predators would get used to where they are. But then to some extent that is the case, because there are some species here that require certain habitats at different times of the day or night. And that becomes somewhat predictable to the predators. For example, the wildebeest and the impala and sometimes zebra, other plains game that needs to be out on the big open area near camp called quarantine. And those animals are the same animals every evening. They might be on a different portion of the big open area, but during the day they'll spend time in different areas of bushveld, because they'll graze in one place for one day and they'll have to graze in another area another day. There's a nightjar up ahead. Switch off my bright lights for this nightjar. About to fly. You'll be able to see it. I don't want to put light directly on it. Known as a whippoorwill in the States. I can't remember. Brian, what do you call nightjars in the UK? Nightjars. There was another name that I heard. And off he's catching things. Now the reason why we find nightjars sitting in the road primarily, actually I'm going to move while I drive because I want to get up onto the open area. Just switch that off. Most nightjar species that we have here hunt from the ground. There are only one or two that hunt from a perch. But by sitting on the ground, it drops the horizon very, very low, and their method of hunting is hawking insects in mid-flight. Oops, mind the hooter horn. They can see insects silhouetted or highlighted against the sky, especially insects that have membranous wings, whose wings become almost highlighted by the light in the sky. Very easy to see them when you're sitting on the ground. If they were to sit higher up, they would lose an immense number of insects that fly just off of the ground. So by sitting on the open ground, they increase their chances of finding insects flying around. And unfortunately, those open patches tend to be roads. And it's very important if you're driving somewhere and you do have a nocturnal bird or an animal on the road, to dim your lights, slow down the car, dim your lights so that you're not blinding it. What happens is when you have lights on, it blinds an animal to the extent that they don't see the darkness around the light as darkness. It might as well be a brick wall. They won't really be able to move out of that. Oh, look, Ellie's two bulls having a little sparring match. What a way to close. I don't know if we're going to be able to see much of them because I don't like putting lights on elephant. So, there's a couple of Ellies over my hat. Hello boys. We're sort of coming towards the end of drive. See if I can a little bit forward. Ellie on my hat here. Always my hat getting in the way. To do, oops, really need to bounce a little bit of light off of the ground. We do need to lighten the shot, but I don't know if we can do much with the camera now that he's got his back to us. But it is dark and one doesn't shine lights on elephants, so unfortunately it's nice to know. You can see a little bit of the silhouette. Well, it's getting that time of the evening when it's getting pretty dark and it's time to maybe call it a day. It's made my day having a few elephants around. It was actually quite close. So I just want to say thanks for joining us. Thanks to Scott for his great stuff this afternoon, hyena, and he went over to Arethusa. We will see you first thing in the morning. Scott won't be here with us. I'll be out. There'll only be one vehicle, but from me and the dove on the back. All of us here at WildEarth, thanks for joining us, and do join us again tomorrow morning. Bye everyone. You can just listen to the sounds of Ellie's breaking branches behind us in the darkness.